Thank you very much. Maybe you added something to my resume. I will not change it, but I will just make one little remark. I was born in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. But all those good things that you said, I will not correct anything, even though I did not do something out of it. Dear Mr. Danfried, dear former Presidents Ivanov and Ivanic, dear former Prime Minister of Moldova, Ms. Natalia, dear members of the Parliament from Finland, from Estonia, from Sweden and from Romania, dear member of Croatian Parliament, Ms. Petir, dear Croatian Ambassador Bakota, ladies and gentlemen, dear students, it's an honor to be here in Berlin and to have an opportunity to speak at the World Forum on Peace and Democracy. The focus of the forum is united in advancing development, democracy and peace around the world. And that is an extremely important topic because today the world is facing multifaceted challenges that are endangering peace and democracy and as well undermining development. According to Varieties of Democracy report, the level of democracy enjoyed by average person in the world in 2023 is down to 1985 levels. Since 2009, almost 15 years in a row, the share of the world living in autocratic countries has overshadowed the share living in democratic countries. Precisely 71% of the world's population, which is exactly 5.7 billion people, live in autocracies, which is an increase from 48% 10 years ago. 29% of the world's population, or 2.3 billion people, live in liberal or electoral democracies. Almost all components of democracy are getting worse in more countries than they are getting better compared to 10 years ago. Former chairman of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Ivanic, asked the question in his speech whether democracy is under the threat. He said by his belief it is, but when you look at these numbers, I think it's no mistake to say that democracy is under a threat and that the ideals of peace and democracy are being tested like never before. Peace and democracy are not mere abstract concepts, and they do not happen by accident. They are lived experiences that require constant nurturing and defense. The threats to these ideals come from various sources, such as the rise of authoritarianism, the spread of misinformation, the development of AI, economic inequalities, climate challenges, and demographic trends in many democratic countries. Each of these challenges demand our immediate attention and concentrated effort. The rise of authoritarianism poses a direct threat to democracy. In many parts of the world, we see erosion of democratic norms, the suppression of dissent, and the concentration of power in the hands of few. To confront this, we must reaffirm our commitment to democratic principles. This means protecting free and fair elections, ensuring the independence of the judiciary, and safeguarding the rights of all citizens to speak freely and assemble peacefully. We must support and stand in solidarity with those who bravely defend democracy in their own countries, often at a great personal risk. The spread of misinformation and disinformation undermines the very fabric of democratic societies. In an age where information flows freely and rapidly, the truth often becomes casualty. Misinformation sows division, erodes trust in institutions, and can even incite violence. Global platforms like TikTok, Instagram, etc. are used to condition hearts and minds of new generations and can be used as a tool to divide people over the hot emotional issues, exposing them to misinformation and disinformation. False information could not only be used as a source of societal disruption, but also of control by politicians in pursuit of political agendas. Although misinformation and disinformation have long histories, the erosion of political checks and balances and the growth in tools that spread and control information could present serious challenge to peace and democracy. Global internet freedom is already in decline, and access to wider sets of information has dropped in numerous countries. False in press freedoms in recent years and related lack of strong investigative media are also significant vulnerabilities that are set to grow. The proliferation of mis- and disinformation may be leveraged to strengthen digital authoritarianism and use of technology to control citizens. Governments themselves will be increasingly in position to determine what is true, potentially allowing political parties to monopolize the public disclosure and suppress dissenting voices, including journalists and opponents. This is a particular concern in those countries facing upcoming elections, where a crackdown on real or perceived foreign interference could be used to consolidate existing control, particularly in flawed democracies or hybrid regimes. Yet, more mature democracies could also be at risk from both extensive exercises of government control or due to trade-offs between managing mis- and disinformation and protecting free speech. To confront this, we must invest in media literacy, promote transparency, especially in media business, and hold accountable those who deliberately spread lies in the public space. It is our responsibility to seek out and share accurate information, to question critically, and to engage in respectful dialogue. AI technologies will radically reshape economies and societies over the coming decade, for better and for worse. Alongside productivity benefits and breakthroughs in fields as diverse as healthcare and education and climate change, advanced AI carries major societal risks and therefore pose a huge challenge to peace and democracy. It would also interact with parallel advancements in other technologies, from quantum computing to synthetic biology, amplifying adverse consequences for peace and democracy. Intentional misuse is not required for the implications to be profound. Novel risks will arise from self-improving generative AI models that are handed increasing control over the physical world, triggering large-scale changes on socio-economic structures. Rapidly evolving development of and reliance on advanced machine intelligence is outpacing our ability to adapt, both to understand the technology itself and to create regulatory safeguards, with regulations playing catch up to the technology. The speed of advances, the depth of market power, and the strategic importance of the industry will continue to challenge the appetite and the regulatory capacity of governance institutions. Downstream risks could endanger political systems, economic markets, and global security and stability. Besides, extensive integration of AI technologies may create a new set of inequalities between countries. The digital gap between high and low income countries is likely to lead to stark disparities in the social impact, both benefits and risks of AI technologies. The most vulnerable countries and communities could be left further behind, digitally isolated from turbocharged AI breakthroughs in economic productivity, finance, climate, education, and healthcare. To confront adverse outcomes of AI technologies on peace and democracy, public awareness and education could be seen as one of the most effective mechanisms and as a key tool to manage local impact as well as build governance capacity and societal resilience. Literacy in generative AI is essential for regulators and for broader society. AI literacy could be integrated into public education systems and trainings for journalists and decision makers to not only understand capabilities of AI systems, but also to identify trustworthy sources of information. National and local regulations can also be seen as effective mechanisms to address risk preparedness and reduction of AI challenges. While national level efforts will not necessarily prevent rapid global proliferation of AI and related risks, robust but flexible standard setting can help ensure that technological development and deployment are aligned with societal needs. The application of existing legislation around intellectual property, employment, competition policy, data protection, privacy, and human rights will need to evolve to address new challenges posed by generative AI. Global treaties and agreements should also play a role in the management of AI challenges and their impact on peace and democracy. Economic inequalities represent another formidable challenge. When vast disparities exist between rich and poor, social cohesion is weakened and the promise of democracy rings hollow for many. We must strive for economic policies that promote inclusivity and fairness, ensuring that all individuals have access to opportunities and resources. Addressing inequality is not only a moral imperative, but also a pragmatic necessity for sustaining peace and democracy. After the start of Russian aggression on Ukraine, whole Europe was hit by that time, unthinkable energy crisis, which impacted high rates of inflation, whether we talk about food, whether we talk about products or services. A couple of months later, many of the European countries countries intervened in order to help their citizens and economy by limiting prices of oil, limiting prices of gas, electricity, and even some food products. All of those limitations were done also in Croatia. Collective effort was done on the EU level when energy ministers limited price of gas at 180 euros per megawatt hour. There was a big debate at that time. It was a period from 2000, April 2002 till December 2002. There was a big debate whether the limiting of the gas price will cause shortages on the European market and whether the whole Europe will be left out of the gas. I was one of the 15 ministers at that time who argued that there will be no shortages and that we need to limit the price of the gas at even lower level. We had representatives of Greece here and Romania also. At that time, Minister Kostas Krekas, Greek Minister of Energy, and Romanian Minister Virgil Popescu, they were also in this group of 15 ministers who wanted the price of the gas to be limited at even lower prices. After limiting the gas price, you know what happened? There were no shortages, and the price of the gas started falling immediately day after, and it was falling down. What happened in Brussels that time? The strong message was sent that speculators on the market would not benefit over the back of the EU citizens and the EU economy. But that did not stop inflation to rise. Analysis done by European Central Bank showed that corporate profits were biggest factor driving up prices in 2002, despite a steep decline in most business costs in the second half of 2022. Inflation went up in 2023 also. So greedocracy, that's how I like to express the term, greedocracy, can also be seen as a challenge to peace and democracy because it is creating frustration and anger among citizens. Ignoring greedocracy opens up space for populists on political stage, which can do a lot of harm to peace and democracy. President Constantinescu, in his opening speech, he called the populists as a cancer of the democracy. I cannot agree more with his statement. Therefore, we have to confront greedocracy on individual level, on the government level, and on the EU level, so the shift in corporate behavior in the way that increasing profits is not the only obsession of companies, especially in times of crisis, and that should be required in order to allow democracy to prosper. The prevalence of violence and conflict remains a persistent threat also. Whether it is a civil unrest, terrorism, or interstate armed conflict, violence disrupts lives and destabilizes societies. When it comes to interstate armed conflict, the attention is on three hotspots in particular. As I mentioned, Russian aggression on Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas war, and the tensions over Taiwan. Escalation in any of these hotspots would radically disrupt global supply chains, financial markets, security dynamics, and political stability, seriously threatening the sense of security and safety of individuals worldwide, and thus endangering peace and democracy. To build lasting peace, we must address root causes of many conflicts: poverty, injustice, and lack of opportunity. This involves not only diplomatic efforts and peace-building initiatives, but also a commitment to social and economic development. We must prioritize dialogue and negotiation over confrontation and coercion. In the light of unfortunate events in the United States, political violence is something that I have to point out as a serious threat to peace and democracy. Assassination attempt on former President Trump, shot in Slovakian Prime Minister Fico, shooting at Croatian government in 2020 when one police officer was wounded, are unfortunate examples of political violence which has adverse impact on peace and democracy. In my opinion, I have to say that those events are, in my opinion, are not normal, and they cannot be explained by any reasonable cause. And it's very hard to confront events like that. But one of the few ways to confront political violence lays on the back of politicians. A narrative of politicians using nowadays in public is often excessive and offensive towards their political opponents, usually having no limits. Behavior like that pours to citizens, and we can see a lot of hate on social networks, which can at one point result in unwanted events. When Mr. Ivanic was giving his speech, I will paraphrase his speech, and he almost said that the crazier you are on the political stage, the more votes you get. I mean, if you behave, or awkward behavior gets a lot of media attention, and I think it's totally wrong way to go from political standpoint. Therefore, politicians should stay on the ball in their public narrative and try to speak in the manner which should be acceptable, not causing division in our societies. I have to mention also climate change, which is not only environmental concern. It is a multifaceted challenge that threatens the stability and the resilience of our societies, with profound implications for both peace and democracy. Climate change exacerbates existing vulnerabilities and creates new ones. Its effects are felt in every corner of the globe, but the consequences are more severe for those who are already marginalized and disadvantaged. Rising temperatures, extreme weather events, and shifting climate patterns disrupt lives, economies, and ecosystems. These disruptions have far-reaching implications for social stability and governance. The link between climate change and conflict is increasingly evident, as resources such as water, arable land, and food become scarcer due to climate impacts. Competition over these resources intensifies. This can lead to local conflicts and have the potential to escalate into a larger, more complex crisis. We have seen this in regions where prolonged droughts have fueled tensions among communities and driven people to migrate in search for better living conditions. Such scenarios create fertile ground for violence and undermine efforts to build and maintain peace. Climate-induced displacement is a growing concern. The sea levels rise and natural disasters become more frequent and severe, and millions of people are forced to leave their homes. This displacement puts immense pressure on receiving communities and countries, often leading to social friction and straining public services. The influx of climate refugees can destabilize regions, create humanitarian crises, and challenge the capacities of government to respond effectively. In order to confront these challenges, investing in sustainable development and climate adaptation is essential. By building resilient and sustainable infrastructure, supporting sustainable agriculture, and enhancing water management, we can reduce the vulnerabilities that lead to conflict. Strengthening the capacity of communities to adapt to changing climate conditions is crucial for preventing displacement and fostering social cohesion. The most important thing is international cooperation. Namely, climate change knows no borders, and neither should our efforts to combat it. I have participated at COP27 and COP28, and I heard a lot of good messages and initiatives, but unless all countries commit and start fighting the climate change, there will be no much progress. We must continue to work together, sharing knowledge, resources, and technologies to mitigate the effects of climate change and support those most affected. Collaborative initiatives, such as Paris Agreement, demonstrate the power of collective action. The European Green Deal should transform the EU into a modern, resource-efficient, and competitive economy, ensuring no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050, economic growth decoupled from resource use, and no person and place left behind. I am a strong proponent of protecting our environment and fighting climate change, but we could see farmers protesting in Europe because EU's green policies. We could see that EU's industry has a problem with competitiveness compared with US and China. And maybe we can ask ourselves whether green transition should be recalibrated in a way that creates less frustration among people and to allow EU to be innovative as US and China. Demographic challenges can significantly influence the stability and cohesion of societies, and thus peace and democracy. Population growth, age distribution, migration patterns, and urbanization all play significant roles in shaping the conditions for peace and functioning of democratic institutions. In regions experiencing rapid population growth and the demand for essential services such as education, such as healthcare and housing increases significantly. When governments are not able to meet these demands, frustration and dissatisfaction can grow among people. This can lead to social unrest, providing a fertile ground for conflict and undermining the stability needed for peace. Conversely, in areas with declining population, often seen in more developed regions, we face different challenges. Aging populations can put burden on social safety nets and healthcare systems, requiring substantial resources to support the elderly. This demographic shift can also lead to labor shortages, affecting economic productivity and growth. Addressing these issues requires thoughtful policies that balance the needs of different age groups and ensure that no segment of the population is left behind. Migration, another critical demographic factor, has huge implications for peace and democracy. People move across borders for various reasons, including economic opportunities, conflict, or environmental changes. While migration can enrich societies by bringing in diverse cultures and skills, it can also lead to tensions if not managed well. Sudden influxes of migrants can strain resources and infrastructure, potentially leading to social friction. So ensuring that migration is orderly, safe, and beneficial for both host and migrant communities is essential for maintaining social harmony and democratic stability. Urbanization, the movement of people from rural to urban areas, is another significant demographic trend. Cities often offer more opportunities for employment, education, and services, attracting large number of people. However, rapid urbanization can also lead to the proliferation of informal settlements, inadequate infrastructure, and increased inequality. These urban challenges can fuel discontent and pose risks to both peace and democratic governance if not addressed through inclusive and sustainable urban planning. Demographic diversity, including ethnic, religious, and cultural diversity, can enrich societies, but also poses challenges. In diverse societies, the equitable representation of different groups in political processes is crucial for maintaining democracy. When certain groups feel marginalized or excluded, it can lead to grievances and conflicts. Promoting inclusive policies that recognize diversity strengthens social cohesion and democratic participation. In my opinion, there is no easy prescription to confronting demographic challenges to peace and democracy. Europe, when you look at Europe is getting older. There are less and less children being born in Europe. The wealthier people become, the more conformist they become. In addition, they have less children. However, in order to try confronting demographic challenges, we have to adopt a comprehensive approach and invest in education and healthcare, promote economic opportunities, have a sustainable urban planning, and manage migration. Some of the challenges to peace and democracy that I mentioned, like interstate conflicts, are familiar to human history. Others, like climate change and adverse effects of new technologies, are new and fast evolving. Many global challenges are interconnected and may have far-reaching consequences to advancing development, democracy, and peace around the world by eroding resilience and reduction of our collective capacity to respond. Despite collaborative effort, remains the cornerstone of confronting challenges to peace and democracy. In confronting these challenges, we must remember that peace and democracy are not responsibilities of the government alone, and every individual has a role to play. When the sum of individual actions are directed towards a common goal, the result can be achieved on the global scale. As citizens, we must engage actively in our communities, advocate for justice and equity, and hold our leaders accountable. Civil society organizations, the media, educational institutions, companies also need to play crucial roles in fostering a culture of peace and democracy. Let me also recognize that challenges are great, but so are the opportunities to rebuild trust, optimism, and resilience in our institutions and societies. We live in a world where collaboration across borders is more feasible than ever. By working together, sharing best practices, and learning from one another, we can strengthen our collective capacity to confront challenges to peace and democracy. In an increasingly fragmented world, the path to peace and democracy is fraught with obstacles, but it's a path worth pursuing. Our commitment to these ideals must be unquestionable. Let us face the challenges head-on with courage, determination, and shared vision of just and peaceful world. Together, we can ensure that values of peace and democracy endure for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Filipovic. So I believe we have one question and also one more via Zoom. But let's first have this one.
Thank you, Minister Filipovic, for your insightful speech. Now, you mentioned AI, you mentioned disinformation and misinformation, and it's true that at European level we have a cognitive warfare based on deepfake. But also at the EU level we have the Digital Service Act, that was implemented from February this year that is going to tackle with the big platforms, Meta, Google, TikTok, in order to attack this subject, deepfakes. What's your opinion on the fact that at the EU level we have the Digital Markets Act, we have the Digital Service Act, we are going to have the AI Act implemented, but meanwhile in the US they are still having a big debate on the fact if they are going to regulate it at all or not, if they are going to do it at the federal level or the local level, and how is going to affect this the performance of EU in advancing AI? Because if we want to take a step forward on AI, we need to have more technological development. And with the regulations that we have on the AI, and I do admit that the deepfakes are major issues also when we have elections, but how do you keep the balance? What do you think? More regulatory? No? What's the balance here?
Thank you very much. You raised a very interesting question, because when you look, I mentioned also European Union's industry, and the thing that there are a lot of incentives in the United States when it comes to their industry. They had the IRA Act, and we face a lot of regulations here in Europe. I think when it comes to the industry, we need to find a way in order to enhance innovation, to, as I said it in my speech, to, when the regulations are done, not to get people angry with it. We saw a lot of protests also in the EU. Farmers were protesting, but when you talk to the people from economy, they usually say there are too much restrictions in Europe. On the other hand, we know how AI can deeply affect elections, what deepfake can do, and it has to be regulated. So we need to find a balance in order from the regulation to allow industry to use it. So AI today is mostly used to enhance operational efficiency in the companies, in the business. So it's used in automotive industry, it's used in the retail, even healthcare systems. But on the other hand, it can be a tool which can endanger democracy in the end, because it can highly affect the way elections are done. I think we need to raise the awareness of the adverse effects of the AI when it comes to deep fake and stuff like that. And always it's key to find a balance. Without the balance, nothing can be achieved.
Thank you for responding. What I was thinking we could do now, with your permission, since I hear also already on Zoom there's a question, if the ambassador and maybe also Ms. Petir could join you on the stage, we can continue this maybe with all three of you, because I know there's some questions also for Ms. Petir and maybe also for the ambassador. So if you would all agree, Ms. Petir, maybe join them on the stage.
I have a question.
Please go ahead, please. And say who you're focused the question is for, please.
Yes. So thank you, Ambassador, for sharing your insights on misinformation and disinformation. One form of misinformation that seems to be going under the radar is the use of hackathons to train next generation software engineers. And now it's being broadened. Hackathons are useful in terms of allowing different people from different expertise to come together. However, most of them are actually unpaid. Is there something that is also being considered for the standards that is being created? Because these are forms of jobs. Some of these hackathons last as long as a week for young people to participate in. Is that something that is being considered as a way to actually standardize it, so that young people who want to build innovative things ethically are actually having an ethical pathway into actually participating in these events? And some of these, you were saying that you mentioned the misuse of AI. One of the pathways is that you have some incubators requiring young people to be able to have had experience to have hacked something. So then people who are desperate to get into these things will do anything, right? And just to prove a point that they can actually do that, how are we standardizing these things so that young people who are very, very brilliant are not being misled into getting into things that would actually derail them from having the values that we want them to emulate in the regulations?
Thank you. I mean, when you're generally speaking about all adverse effects of AI, all those bad things should be they should be done in a way so that young people are aware of it. So education is key when it comes to issues like that. If young people are not educated about things like that and what adverse effects of AI are, there can be a lot of problems. So it's obligation of the politicians and those who are setting those standards to find the right way in order to educate young people about all the potential adverse effects of those technologies for to not put them in a bad situation.
We can continue. I think there was another question via Zoom. Would you like to take the opportunity now? If not, we can go to the conference room. Tanga, would you like to ask your question now? If not, then please, if in the room, question or comment, please. Okay.
Thank you so much for your good presentation. Just I'm asking you, the big challenge for the peace and also for democracy in Croatia is the new generations or the borders or political crisis. Which one is the in this regard? And what do you think about the future for the Croatians, new generations, for new technology in these cases? Thank you.
And when you answer your question, if you'd be so kind as to go to the podium, because the microphone there is linked to Zoom. These microphones work for us, but the podium.
Was this question directed to me?
Yeah, directly.
Excellent. Also the video camera is there too. Thanks.
Thank you. When it comes to things that can endanger, let's say, democracy and peace, I'm talking from Croatian perspective, and I don't want that this looks like bragging, but if you look at the crisis in Croatia and in other parts of Europe, I can say that Croatian citizens they almost did not feel the energy crisis. And why was that? Because Croatian government and my ministry at that time was doing some, at that point of time, brave moves. So we had escalation in energy prices. The price of electricity escalated. It was around 500 euros per megawatt hour. You had gas also escalating price. You had escalating prices of oil. What we did, we limited price. We protected our citizens, we protected our economy. So we limited price even for the small craftsmen, but we limited electricity price also for the biggest companies. Of course, the limitation was different depending on the company. We also limited the price of the gas, so Croatian citizens paid the second lowest price of the gas in Europe. The only lower price was in Hungary. We had one of the lowest prices of oil also, which is also a big boost and help to our citizens, but also economy, because all those gas and oil and electricity is used for functioning of our economy. What we also did, we limited the price of several products in retail stores. First, it was 9 basic products to help the people who are in most need. And afterwards we limited, it was last year, somewhere around September, it was among almost 300 products, the price was limited. So you had a huge pushback at that point from the industries, from the media, because they were saying that there will be shortages, that this is putting back Croatian economy to former Yugoslavia and socialism, which was all truth. I was mentioning in my speech gridocracy. You had exact data from European Central Bank saying that in 2002 the main driver of inflation was raising profits, raising corporate profits. And despite of the fact that prices of energy stabilized the second part of the 2022. So when you do all these moves, you have pushback from the industry, but people are satisfied. We did not have any protests in Croatia, and we held our social cohesion. So that's what we did. Why am I saying this? Because in 2023, Croatia's GDP growth was 3.1%. It was second highest growth in the whole European Union. And I'm coming then to your question. I think that the perspective of young people in Croatia is very good. They have job opportunities, new jobs are creating, and basically anyone who wants to work in Croatia can work now, can find a job, and it can be paid in that way that they have to stay in Croatia, and they contribute to our economy growth. And especially when it comes to new technologies, we have a lot of companies who are high-tech companies. We have a company called Rimac Technology, which produces electric cars, and they have a lot of new innovation, and I think we will be pioneers in some of the things in Europe. So that's the situation currently in Croatia, and inflation is calming down, even though I had a short conversation with the former Prime Minister of Moldova. We had a big discussion in Croatia when inflation was going up. So inflation was going up in all Europe. But you had the monetary policy, you had the central bankers who, in my perspective, they didn't do anything, even on the national level, and I'm talking about the European level. But the media and, of course, the citizens, they always point fingers to politicians. They say, what are you going to do? Why are you not preventing the rise of inflation? And you have always the backfire when you do something. Why are you doing that? You are moving back to socialism. But all the limitations we did in Croatia, they proved right, they proved good, and we had a growth in our economy. And I know that some countries copied moves from Croatia when it comes to limiting all these things that I mentioned, and especially in limiting products. I know that in North Macedonia, I was visiting them last year. They also limited one spectrum of products. The limitation was also done in Montenegro. So those moves were good. Especially in Croatia, we have increase in our economy, and we expect our economy to grow further and to strengthen Croatia's position in the UE map. You're welcome.
Would like to go next? Via Zoom or in the room? Tanguy, I'm not sure if you're there, but I know that you wanted to ask something for Ms. Petir, if you're still there. Otherwise, take from the room. Comments or questions?
If I may say something,
Please.
Me and Ms. Petir, we regulated work on Sundays. That's something new in Croatia. And she was the biggest proponent of making changes in law on trade in Croatia, in the Croatian parliament, and I can say that I was pushing it very on the government level. Now work in Croatia is regulated during Sundays, that big retail places can work only 16 Sundays during the whole year. Before they were able to work all Sunday. And in Germany, you know the situation. You know the situation in Austria also. You know the situation in half of the European countries that stores do not work on Sundays. We had a huge pushbacks in Croatia that tried to prevent that. But from my own belief and from Ms. Petir's belief, I think we did, and of course, from the government's perspective, we did a very good job, because we allowed thousands and thousands of people to be together during the Sundays, not to spend time in the shopping centers, but to be with their families, with the friends, and that's something that I'm proud of that we did, I can say, together. So we did a lot of regulating things. Thank you.